Hey guys, H-Drive here with another deck profile. This is going to be with all the set 1 decks. This one in particular is your standard no limit Hirana deck. I would like to do at least one of each deck before it gets changed by the new set. So here it is, all set 1 before the changes. So we'll start with the Hiranos. Hirano on enter as a level 3. Gives you a draw and an inner charge, as well as giving your attacking signies +1, plus 2000 power. And its once per game effect is rest 2 level 2 Elrigs on your board to gain the effect. Gains the effect rest 2 level 2 on your boards, and you deal 1 damage to your opponent unless they guard with a PG. This effect will kill players because it doesn't say crush a life cloth. So if your opponent has 0, they have to guard with a PG for this attack. And it's very good. It's a very nice finishing effect. You never want to do it early. It's a really good closer. And then we'll move on to the Akino section. Akino's package is with Thumbs Up and Bye Bye. Thumbs Up is really standard. You add 2 dudes from the top 7 from your deck. 1 has to be red and 1 has to be white. It is basically hand advantage optional. But it's very strong. And Bye Bye is return a opponent's signature to their hand. And then you pay white in a generic to add a G to your hand. This effect doesn't really help against the mirror matchups, but it helps against the non-mirror matchups. I like to play as though I want to build the deck as like the most balance of the two. Do note that if you want to change it for your matchups in certain decks, do change it for your certain matchups. Next is Ray. We have Lunar Blossom and Empty Blade. Lunar Blossom is in here for the mirror matchups primarily, just because it hand hates your opponent. Hand hates your aggressive matchups. And then Empty Blade is always good because it discards 2 and you draw 2. So it's very flexible as those 2 pieces. And then, as well as Lunar Blade is really good for the mirror matches. In the non-mirror matches, it's not as great. You rather just play the card that says draw 2. But I think I wanted to keep my pieces for the grow pieces as flexible as I can in certain matchups. If you don't like that, let me know below. Should I stay with a meta or should I not? It's always really good. These are always, once again, skeleton decks. And then if you ever want to change them, or really cool niche decks, if you ever want to change them, go ahead and change them. Next of our pieces, go to the top and Glory Grow. Grow to the top in these colors is the strongest piece we have for these colors. You can search for Elric to your hand, and then if your opponent's at level 3, you can trash through their enter, so it shuts off all the defensive grow shenanigans or text. If they have 3 or less enter. And Glory Grow is a piece that says give your Elrig double crush, and your opponent can guard. Do note that double crush does not stack with her once per game effect, so you do not ping for 2, you only ping for 1. I've read a whole bunch of rulings for this, and that's how it was. Any pro people, let me know in the comments below. If it's wrong, I'm like 70% sure. So those are the pieces, and for the Elric decks, and on to the main. If you have seen any of the videos, I usually start with the 3s, but I probably will start with the 1s. Going with probably my favorite card in the deck, Hamios. Hamios are great ones that say if you, on enter, you pay a white. If you do, look at the top 3 cards, add 1, 2, or less to your hand, and put the rest at the bottom. Also has a trigger effect, which is basically the same thing without cost, but you can put it onto the board. Looking for your early pieces are always really great. In an aggro deck, you never fall down. People have looked down on this card in the beginning, but I think people have started to warm up. And foils for this card are ridiculous, and they shouldn't be. But at the same time, I come from Vanguard, and Vanguard is a very cheap game, but I think it's pretty dang good. This is a must staple if you are in white. Next are pounds. As I said before, pounds are good. PGs are good. Multi-enter is very good effect. Having this in your gauge when you need to is really good. And having this in your drop is really good because it has the trigger ability to add it back to your hand. In the mirror match, it does play a little bit differently, but It's always good to have it. Next we have Prism Angel, Iris. Iris is basically a pumper on the board, but you primarily play her for her trigger ability, draw a card, and enter charge 1. It's really strong, because it's basically your Vanguard's, your Elrug's main on enter effect, just as a trigger, and as much gauge as you can get, as much card advantage as you can get, makes an aggro deck click. And it's very different for other card games, because most aggro decks don't gain draw power. Next are 2 vanillas in level 1s, because you actually have like a lot of good level 1 pieces that you kind of don't want to add more to it. You only play the 2 just because you have like stronger like attacking pieces, such as your Crimson Angels and your Hamiels. And then you play 2 Zhao Yun. Zhao Yun is only here for the mirror matchups, I believe. Because it says, during your opponent's turn, you gain Shadow level 2 or less. Basically, it can't be untargetable. It's really good against the mirror matchup because your opponent can't kill this. It is always a shield. You can replace this with Percival's, just if you need that more beefiness. But I think I added the 2 in on the last minute just because I want a defensive option against the mirror matchup. Next is for Calons. Big thing is big. If it does die, if it does get vanished, you draw a card, and then on enter you discard 1. It also has a trigger ability of you pay a red and a colorless, and you destroy target Signy with 12 or less power. It's really good. Big bodies are really big. It's very strong, and I personally like this card a lot because with the dex advantage to gain a lot of hand advantage, this card is not the worst cost to pay. So we play 4 of those. Next is, of course, 4 Lancelots. Lancelots are very strong. On enter, pay a generic. You destroy a Signy with 5,000 or less. It's good on your turn 2 plays. It's good on your late game plays. Not as many. There's a lot of level 1 servants that are really low. And even level 2, like, key pieces are also 5,000 power, except for vanillas. It's really strong. I personally recommend playing at least. You have to play 4. And then if you do buy the trial deck for no limit, it does come with 4. So I do play with that. Also, it does some really cool tricks with Hamiel if you trigger her, the defensive trigger, and it's really good. Next is 2 Gawains. 2 Gawains are actually in here because you need yellow fixing. But also at the same time, your grade 2s are really big already, and Lance also really good. And then your grade 3s are always outclassed as well. So you only play the 2 just to grab some color fixing. And then they're also really good targets for your Akina grows. Next is 4 Rose Quartz. Her effect to destroy somebody with level 12 with 2 red is a little pricey. On attack, you discard 2, draw 2. I think this will go down in future numbers. I played this as a 4 as a skeleton. I haven't hated it, but I haven't loved it in that sense. It might go down to 3 or 2 in the next future sets. Once again, this is just a skeleton. There are more decks that are slacked up. This is a skeleton for a mirror matchup, as well as sometimes with too much extra energy you can just pop things. So I do play for those. Next is 4 Nobunaga's. Has the brightest condition of placing on top of red. That's why you play a lot of reds and not some other colors. On enter, you may banish a unit with 8,000 or less, so it's really good on the early game. And then you can pay 2 to give it Double Crush. Double Crush is really relevant. If you don't solve it, you are going to die by Double Crush. I like this a lot in most of my playing tests against other people. Because I primarily did the 8,000 pop. Roses I didn't like as much because of 12,000, but I think 12,000 is more relevant, so that's why I kept it at a 4 of. These numbers will probably change once the next set hits, and we will see from there. And as of course, as a red deck, I am playing 2 Marses. Mars is really good, gives you Assassin by paying 3 on discarding 3 on enter, and then when it hits a Signy, you can hit a color that is not the same color as your opponent's main L rig. As a red deck, you play Marses because it's really strong, but you only need to play 2. I really found in my testing, just because as a mono red deck you will play at 4, but as a mixed variant with like a red with a little bit of white, you don't primarily focus onto this. This is like a really good like end game closer, and this is kind of similar to most no limit decks that do play with Marses. And of course, we have 4 Deafening Infernos. It says destroy target Sydney with 8,000 or less. Unless you're with no limit, then you do 10,000 instead. It also has a trigger ability of banish target your opponent's up Signy. For triggers, surprisingly, there's not as much defensive triggers, except for like Cabolds or Deafening Infernos. But your creatures come with that like removal effect. This all changes between people. I think most of the staples are mostly here for that fella. And that is pretty much the deck. It is a very simple deck because everybody's been playing it, so there's definitely some decks that did not play my pieces. There's definitely a lot more profiles of No Limit because aggro is usually a very easy deck to play with. If you guys like this deck, let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, do the usual YouTube things. And as always, thank you for watching. Bye-bye!